Welcome to McGowan's Canvas Miracles. Well, today we're going to do something a little bit different. We have a guest on each week and we go through what's happening in our town. And when I started the show, the object was to sort of bring awareness to what's happening in our communities across the province, and especially here in Miramichi where I'm from, different soup kitchens and what the politicians are doing. And so we talk with everybody each week. And while we do it, we do a painting. And people are always commenting or send me a note saying, "Oh, Rob, I'd like to try this painting or that painting, or a few more details. Could you send me on the picture you were working on?" So I thought today for what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the philosophy of painting, sort of why I do it and how it changes you inside. And if you attack it in a way, in a mindset that's better, like we're constantly saying, I think it was Van Gogh there said that if something inside you says you can't paint, by all means paint, and that voice will go away. So we're working on that philosophy. And painting for me has always been a sort of a way to heal. As a young man, I did lots of things that lived in places and had struggles and things, as we all do, to get over. But I found painting was sort of an escape, a place where I could forget about my troubles for a moment and engulf myself into something. And I never thought I could paint. I always thought, oh, not very good at this. And then slowly but surely, through hard work and going over the process, I realized anybody can learn anything. You don't have to be a master of things, but you can learn to do something that will bring you to the next sort of phase in life. And today we're going to work on clouds. And clouds are a unique thing. Everyone who's ever come to my class, they always start out by saying, "Oh, clouds," and they paint a few circles, and it's kind of it's one of those things you don't really know why they're painting the way they do, because it's all technique. So clouds are soft, they're fluffy, and they're always forever changing. They're never stagnant. They're not these things that are perfect on the circles or shapes. And as humans, we have a tendency to want to put things in a way that we see them perfectly right off the bat. Well, with acrylic paintings or oil paintings, we let the paint sort of appear. And we're going to work on that today. And I'm going to start with a canvas. Now, I've painted the canvas just a blue color. I put some white and blue together just to give myself something basic to start with, to fill in sort of the holes on your canvas. Acrylic paint has a way of separating as it goes along when it dries. So you want to get enough paint on the first layer to make sure that the holes aren't pulling apart, and then you've got a base to work with. Now we're going to work with a misting bottle, and this is to keep things soft. Now you can get mediums for acrylic that will hold the paint together and spread it around and keep it moist while you're working, which is better. But I'm old school, and I love to work with just a little bit of mist. Water will separate your paint if you put too much, and that's a delicate process, but lightly, inexpensive, make it affordable for everybody. We're going to start with some simple brushes that you can get at any local paint store for a few dollars, and you'll work your way up to preferences that you like as you go. A palette, I have what's called a wet palette. So this palette here, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but this palette has different colors, warms and cools on the whole page, and underneath there's a wet sponge which keeps my paint moist as I work. And it's a sort of a waxy kind of paper. So that's what we got to work with and to get started. And we're going to start with the basics. We're going to paint dark to light. Our brushes are a little bit moist, but not wet, just moist. Put some water in it and you can wipe it out on your canvas to get started. We're going to take a little bit of blue, cobalt blue, cerulean blue. It all depends on if you want a light or dark kind of sky to start. And we'll start mixing it. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but I'll mix it up on here. So you can see, get some kind of dark color. We're trying to stay away from the white as much as possible. We're going to put a little bit of the Payne's gray in there and start working with a colored sky to build our way out. You know what? I'm going to add a little bit of red just to give it a bit of a purple tone to make it nice. When you're spreading it on the canvas, you're going to start maybe put a little bit of mist, just to give yourself something to work with. We're going to put that first bit of cloud on the canvas. We're just scrolling around, a little bit of scrub, and I'm touching the brush so light that my fingers are hardly touching it all. Soft, soft edges. And then I'm going to just see what sort of appears. A little bit at a time. So that's the main thing. So when you're painting a sky, if you get a chance, go out and look at the sky. It's forever moving. It's constantly one shape and then another shape, which can be, as an artist, you can think, oh, how am I ever going to keep up with this? So it's a blessing and sort of a curse at the same time. But it's sort of like our life, isn't it? We go through this phase in life where we think everything is going just great, just perfect, and then something crashes down on us and makes it harder than we thought it was going to be. Or things are terrible and we're struggling, and all of a sudden we get a break and something happens and things start to work out. If you think back on your whole life, the many years you've done things, all the times you might have been down and out and struggling and thinking, oh, how am I ever going to get through this? Well, those times are gone now. They don't even exist anymore. You know, they disappear. Just like the clouds, just like the rivers, you never stand in the same water. You know, one man gets in and you think you're in the same picture because we have the same general outlook. But as we step into it, the water is forever changing, just like we're forever changing. And that's what we got to think about with our clouds. So we don't want to be putting on a shape saying, look we're painting just a shape. We want to have a technique. So we're scrubbing loosely, just putting some loose stuff around. And then I take a softer brush and I just sort of try to dry it out if you've got a rag of some kind. You never want it too wet. So if you see all that dampness on your brush, you want to have a sort of a drier brush. And then we're just going to soften everything up. So notice I'm not painting white clouds. The reason being because clouds aren't white. Clouds are reflections of everything we see in the sky and the water. And so if you think about it, the very few things are white in the clouds. The only thing that's white is when maybe at the end when we want to highlight a little bit to start creating light, and we'll talk about that as we go. So we're just going to work on the outside edges and work our way around. Touch of that red, just give it a bit of an undertone of purple, just to make it kind of interesting. So on this side of the sky, I noticed that I had put a little more paint, so it's a little darker. And one thing I try to do when I'm painting is always go with the mistakes. I'm going to tell a little story later about a Japanese concept I follow called wabi-sabi. In my life, I study a lot of Marcus Aurelius and old Stoic philosophies and try to keep myself content, because we know we're going to go through struggles. All of us. Doesn't matter how well you're doing. There's always something going against you, whether it's a sickness, whether it's a job, or whether you're struggling financially. There's always seems to be something in this life. Physically, maybe you're going through something that's painful in your life, an operation. But whatever it might be, it's not what you're going through, because we all go through things. It's how we go through them. And the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius got up one day and he started to write to himself. He said, I'm emperor. I can do anything I want. I can travel around the world. I can conquer. I can stay in bed all day if I want. Why do I even want to get up out of bed? What is my purpose? And he started to write down, what do I encounter during the day? And in those things, he said, he noticed a lot of stuff. He noticed that people were always out to go against him or do things in a way to promote themselves. So most of the truth wasn't truth. It was truth according to what they were trying to accomplish. So he learned to study, what is it they're trying to show me? What are they trying to tell me? What am I trying to understand? And he realized we're all going to die. It's all, that's the end process is the same for all of us. But along the way, what is the journey? And I think his famous quote is, many men have every man will die, but not every man will live. So when you think about that, what is living? What is living to you? What is painting? What is your job? You might go into a job and hate it every day. Is that living? No. So you want to figure out how you get to the next process. I think it was Dr. Peterson, one time I was listening to, he was doing a lecture, and he was talking about where do you start? You know, you're falling apart, your life is sort of troubled, and you say, how do I get out of this mess? And he said, well, before you go change the world, maybe just clean your bedroom. And I thought, clean your bedroom? What kind of a concept is clean your bedroom? He said, basically, look around your room. When you get up in the daytime and you look at your dresser, you look at the paintings on your wall, you look at the mattress cover you have, the blankets. If you could have the perfect room, everything you ever dreamed of and wanted, are you in that room now? And when you start to work on that process, just the simple things, the little thing. What is the bed cover I want that would make me happy? That's the thing I would like to have in my room. And you work on getting that thing. What is the curtains I would like to have? What color would I like my room to be? When you can start to get through the process of working on your own life in a way that starts to make sense and get your dreams come true at the small levels, once you go from the micro, the macro becomes easier because you have an understanding, a process, a discipline. Well, painting's the same way. If you start with the beginning process of just saying, okay, I'm scrubbing, adding some color, some dark to light, and I'm working my way up, and you start to watch how the process unfolds, then you can start to trust yourself. You don't have to worry about, oh, what's going to happen? Is this painting going to look good? Are these clouds the right shape? You can just sort of start to unfold things and see what happens. So as you see, I'm not really trying to paint any certain particular cloud or shape. I'm just adding color. And I'm always using the same color, a little bit of blue, a little bit of red. Let's throw a little bit of orange in just to give ourselves a bit of a darker color. So I'll take and just put a little mist of water just to loosen it up. Soft, soft clouds. I'm constantly making the edges soft. Working around. And just seeing what appears to me. Now you'll notice things starting to look different around the canvas. You're starting to see lights and darks and shades. And after, we're going to take what's given to us, as we should in life, and try to figure out how can we make what I have work for me. A little bit more blue. Now the colors I'm working with today are cadmium blue, a little bit of Payne's gray, some cadmium orange, titanium white, and a little cerulean red, or not cerulean, or cadmium red, I should say. Now the cadmium red just will turn the blue a little bit purplish, just to give the sky some interesting concepts. I notice that a bunch of hairs are showing up on my canvas from my brush. Happy accident? Maybe, as old Bob Ross used to say. Just take a cloth, wipe it off, don't get upset. Enjoy it. Enjoy the process and see what starts to appear. Maybe one side of the sky, let's make it dramatic so we can sort of see it on TV. We're going to darken it right up on just one side. See what we got over here. So I'm going to go with a lot of the blue and the Payne's gray, making one side of my sky sort of darker. And I never go too far, and then I soften it up. I'm constantly going through, taking out brush marks. And already we can start to see something's appearing. Soft edges. Always keeping it soft. The softer, the better. Who wants anything hard in life anyway? We want to keep it soft. There's an old saying somebody sent me just recently, actually. It kind of reminded me of I read a lot of books, the Tao Te Ching and the Bible especially, and old philosophies from the past. I'm constantly watching debates on TV, as we all have, about the difference between morals and perspectives of people and where we come from, what we do, and none of us really know. We just sort of try to figure it out and take the best advice as we see it, and that can change according to who you're listening to all the time. But one saying that there's a name in the Bible, and it reminded me, and it's I am. So God uses the name I am in the Bible, which I thought was quite interesting, to call yourself I am. And there's a saying, if you say I cannot, and I am not, I'm not capable, all these things can sort of bring you down and make you believe that you can't do something. But the minute you start to say, I can do this, I am better than this, I'm great, I'm amazing at this thing I'm doing, I'm able to get better than I am now. The minute you start using the words I am, you're inciting that which was within you. So if you think about it from a Bible perspective, I guess it could be God using the name I am. So if God is within us, according to the scriptures, that would be one way you could think about it. So it's always okay to look for something, whatever's deep within inside you, and bring it out. Now the Tao Te Ching, which is an ancient Japanese writing, they had 81 verses in the Tao Te Ching. It talks about the way. So one of the first quotes in the very first verse talks about, once you know the way, you've lost the way. So sort of like the clouds, if we decide this is how the cloud's going to be, it's going to be this shape and these things, you've lost the way. The purpose in painting is to let it evolve and discover and encounter something a feeling. Painting shouldn't be just something that you lay on the canvas perfectly. You could illustrate something that way, but art to me is more about the love of finding something and how you feel. A painting should engulf a feeling from within you, the artist, that becomes unique. Welcome back to McGowan's Canvas Miracles. Well, today we're working on clouds and talking about the philosophy of painting and how it makes you feel, and why should you paint? Why even endeavor to paint? There's something, most of us, for some reason in the arts, whether it's singing or painting or writing poetry, we're always trying to express ourselves from within. And painting is a great way to sort of relax and bring yourself to that place where you can just sort of let things go and watch things appear. And it's a form of meditation in the way I see it. And today we're working on clouds and how they're forever changing. If you ever look at the sky, it's never the same way twice. It just constantly is moving. And just like us, we're constantly changing. So the main problem people have with skies is they're always trying to paint perfection. Just like in life, we're trying to do things in a perfect way. And instead, we should be working on sort of the mistakes in our life and how we can correct them and make ourselves evolve from each deficit we have as we work along. So as I've been putting this painting together, I start to see some openings happening up. So we're going to work on from dark to light. So we'll think of it as though we're in a dark place and the sky is really dark. So we're going to add a little Payne's gray in and start really darkening up the sky, giving us an idea of what's going to happen here. Maybe we want to have a landscape underneath, so it might be a mountain, some hills in the background, so we'll start to be able to see the clouds and make them appear. So we'll throw in a few little cliffs. Somebody sent me an old Bob Ross clip about little things he used to say, and I remember as a kid I would sit there for hours just watching Bob Ross paint and think, oh my goodness, if someday I could paint, wouldn't that be just a wonderful thing? And he made it seem so easy and was such a master at it. Nowadays, he inspired so many people. There's thousands of people online doing paintings and drawings. And the other day I seen somebody take a branch and they dipped it in some paint and they whacked it against the canvas, and before you knew it they had some trees on a shrubbery. So it can be as easy or as complicated as you want to make it. Always, when you're working on the painting, keep it soft as you can. A little bit of mist now and then, a nice soft brush, softening things up. Now that we've got some kind of a dark sky coming in against our mountain, what we're going to do is try to figure out where our light sources would be. So a painting has to have a direction, something you want to do. As you can see from, I don't know if you can see it on the paintings I've had in the set, but each set of clouds has a familiarity to it, but at the same time, they're all different. They all create something unique. So it's the same process I go through every time. And all I do is I might change the colors or something I'm working on, but it's the same soft, easy process, just seeing what appears. And once we've got the base clouds in, we want to have some drama or something that sort of pushes the eye. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint black on this side. Start pushing your eye into this sort of circle in the middle. Again, I'm going to point up to the center of the sky there and add a little bit of color, dark. So if we are going to push you up, what do we want to push you up to? Well, how about we start adding some light in there? So I'm going to take a real light bluish white. So I'm going to mix a little titanium white and a little blue and a little antique white. Why not? Just see what happens here. And we'll center out the sky, sort of making it start to appear. Like there's a hole in the sky maybe, something there. So we want this a lighter color than everything else. Darkness around it, but there's some light coming through some kind of a hole here. Now, as I start to see this edge, I'm thinking in my mind, oh, well, somehow I'm going to show that light coming down to something later on. So maybe we take a little Payne's gray and a little yellow, and we're going to make ourselves a green. So I'm thinking the light might hit some grass down here, and there's a little bit of green happening. So as I see the light hitting the green, I want to make it darker as I move along and create a shadow. Again, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to drive the eyes towards that hole, towards some light. So I keep making it darker as I move out. And this part of the painting is just called blocking in. A river has a point perspective. There's always a small, far away section that looks really tiny, and where you're close, it's big. So we could add a river in, where it starts up here, really small, starts working its way down. And again, this isn't the finished painting, we're just blocking in, trying to get values and an understanding of where we might go with this painting. And as I get closer, we want things close up to us to be wide and large, and things far away to be small. So that's another way we can direct the eye and get people moving towards where we want them to go. And in the end, I probably want them to be down here. There'll be a little village. I've done so many different paintings like this over my time. I pretty much know where we're going. I have a few here in the studio. We'll pick up in the last part of the show and show you at the finished section where you would be with a painting and how you would continue this on. So we're driving you towards the plane. The sky's got a hole there. Now that we've let it dry a little bit, we're going to start adding to the clouds. So how do we make clouds real? we start lightening up as we go along. So wherever we had gray, now we're going to add a little white into our gray, just a little titanium white. Not a lot. We're going to start working our way up slowly. So as we change the tone, we get a little bit lighter each time. And with whatever section you're working on, so if this section was lighter, then of course you're going to want to go to a lighter value, adding in, nope, so that's a little dark. So we'll add it in. And you never worry about mistakes. There's an old story, as I was saying earlier, I study different philosophies, Chinese philosophies, the Bible and everything. And in Japan, they had this old story about, it's called wabi-sabi, and it's the idea of getting control of our melancholy. So when we were sad and depressed, we have to realize everybody has that. And when we're broken and things are shattered, that's actually a gift. And you think to yourself, a gift, how can that be a gift? Well, the way it was developed, there was a fellow, he had a Chinese tea shop. Japan's famous for its tea ceremonies and beautiful cups and things. Now you would think the most beautiful cups were made by the artisans in perfection and getting things great, but they discovered something. So I can't remember the fellow's name exactly, Hiroku or something like that, but he had this beautiful teacup. He used to mix his pottery every day and he had this teacup that he just loved to drink out of. It just made him feel good. One day he went to go get his cup of tea and he was walking out and he dropped the teacup and it broke and the handle broke a little bit and he was devastated. He was like, oh, how can I ever paint? But as he picked it up, he thought to himself, I don't want to lose this teacup. It's very important to me. And I've had it, my mother had passed it down to me for many years and I've used it. So he took it into the shop and it sat there all day beside him as he worked away and he couldn't concentrate. He was like, I don't understand. What can I do? So he thought, what if I were to fix the teacup? But then I'm going to have this cracked looking teacup and it's going to be ugly. And he thought, well, maybe I can fix it to be more beautiful than it was before. So he developed this process of mixing a certain powder together in a gold color and bringing the cup back together. And not only did he not try to hide the crack, he emphasized it. He said, I'm going to make it gold, a beautiful gold pattern. So he inlaid the gold and he plated it together and sanded the cup down, and the crack now had this beautiful lining of gold and pieces going through the crack. And the art form became known as kintsugi, but it was the most beautiful bowl he had ever created. And he realized that the nature of life is repairing and learning how to deal with when things break, and how do we make things better in life? How do we repair? Not always try to have new and shiny, but how do we take the old things? And when you go through Japan in their houses and on tables, the most beautiful art pieces that they're proud of are things that have been broken in their life and they've repaired and turned into these designs. And it's beautiful art. It's an amazing thing to see. So you can study it as you go along. And that's the way you should look at your life as you go. Just kind of put it together. Not that I'm broken or oh, I'm terrible, I can't believe this happened to me. But how can I take what's happened to me and use it to my advantage? You say to yourself, how does this apply in life? How is this even, easy to say? And I say, even at the darkest part of your life, this concept takes place. I was on radio for many years, and there's a place I go up. It's a men's group where they take people that have gone through addictions and troubles and their lives has fallen apart. And I used to interview them for their testimony, because you learn more out of hearing people's stories in life than you can out of anything else. There was a young man. He was there going through the program, and I wanted to have a talk with him. So we sat down and we talked, and he was giving me his testimony, telling me his story. And I said, what's so terrible? He said, I'm just the most awful person on earth. I've I've done things that you wouldn't believe. And I said, well, tell me about it. So we sat there, and he started to tell me a story, and he said, I was doing drugs, getting high, I had stolen money from my parents, I had ripped off everybody I knew in life, and he said, I just had become an awful person, and I was doing drugs one day, and there was a man across from me, and he was on the couch, and he was asleep. I thought he was asleep, and I went over and I stole his wallet, he said, and I bought some more drugs. Well, he said the man was his friend. They had been friends for many years. It turned out that his friend wasn't asleep. He had passed away. He had died from an overdose, and so he had stolen from his friend who had died. And he said, "What kind of person am I that I would do something like that?" And I said, "Well, where are you now?" And he said, "Well, I'm in the center. I'm trying to rehabilitate and change my life." And I said, "Well, the difference is your testimony is true. You're here trying to accomplish something. So when you get to a place where you've made the changes from there, the people that are there now that are going through the struggles that you were going through then are going to relate to you and your story, and it's believable. Anybody can say, oh, get off drugs, don't be addicted. Anything's possible. But your story is believable because you've been there and you've done this." So that young man, he went on to finish that course, and I put his testimony on the radio. He allowed me to tell his story. And there was a pastor named, I can say his name, he doesn't mind me telling the story, Ray Arsenal, who had heard the story on the radio, and he said, it changed his life, Rob. He said, I went out the next day, he said, the building next to my church, I started working with people and addicts and taking them to the shelter and doing things. He said that story had changed his life. And that young man went on to do amazing things. He became a counselor for drug addiction and helped so many people along the way. So it's like, same as the story of the teacup and taking something that's broken and pouring the gold into it and emphasizing the broken part. When we start to realize that our gifts are not that we're perfect or we're special, our gifts are that how we overcome the hardships in our life, the things that have made things so unbearable. Because there's people going through that don't quite know how to do it, and your unique story will give them some insight. So don't be afraid of your deficits and your things that go in your life that make you feel down and out. Use those to lift you up, to emphasize, to say, okay, yes, I've done bad things, I've done terrible things, but how can I take those and make the world a better place? There's an old saying in Latin, what good is a man who does not make the world a better place? And I've always loved that saying. And when you get up in the morning, going back to the early philosophies of thinking about, first I'm going to change my room and my life that way, and work on myself. And as you come across people, think about what you can do to help them in some way or another. One story, so an instance, I was in a restaurant, and this lady come out. I was sitting there having my breakfast, and just thinking, oh, one of those days, I got a lot of work to do today. And I seen a lady come out. She had a hairband on. She had a great big plate of dishes, and she was so upset. She was just, you could tell she was having a really, really bad day. And I thought, oh, I just felt for her. I felt like I've had those moments, like days like that. And I said to her, I said, did you dance this morning? I've probably told this story before, but she looked at me like I'm crazy. She said, dance? What do you mean dance? I said, well, when you dance in the morning, everything around you changes. The whole world changes. Life gets better. And she says, you're crazy, Rob. I have 5 kids. I don't dance. I said, well, you know it works. She said, no, it doesn't. That doesn't work. I said, you don't think that dancing makes people happy and smile and changes the mood around you, and you don't think you can change the world? And she said, of course not. So I stood up at the counter, being the fool I am, and not afraid of making fun of myself. I started to dance a little bit, and I could see her looking out of the corner of her eye, and before I knew it, she couldn't help but laugh a little. It was a little bit funny. She was like, what? What are you doing? and the people behind me were laughing at the table, and the waitresses were laughing, and the owner was laughing. And from then on, she started to laugh, and she said, "Oh, you're so silly." But every time when I came into the restaurant from then on in, she would always have these homemade little cookies she had baked for me, and she would come over and she'd say, "I danced this morning, Rob." And every transaction we have, it doesn't matter who it's with, can make an impact on the world. All right, well, we're back with McGowan's Canvas Miracles. So obviously, it's a 1-hour show, and we have a limited amount of time. A painting for me takes hours and hours, sometimes days, sometimes weeks. And you can do simple clouds like what we talked about today, and maybe I'm going to show you one little process of, you could take something as simple as a piece of paper, turn it backwards, and we can take a little bit of white and just have some light coming down from our sky. So once we've got a direction, we just follow along with it. And all of a sudden, you've got light coming out of the sky. Create some kind of ambiance and something going on. So now I'm going to show you, we're going to move to the finished painting, not finished, but a painting that I'm almost finished on, and work on the ending of it. So that's the beginning where I would start the process. Maybe, I'll show you one more thing here. Maybe I would throw in a little village of some kind. Put a little house in. So when you're deciding on your house and what you're going to do, just think about, what would you like to have in a picture? Where would you like to live? You know, maybe you always dreamt of going to Tuscany or something. So you think, oh, I'm going to throw in a little Tuscan tree or something like that. So as simple as a couple of brush strokes, you can start giving yourself an idea of where a house might be. You can take a little yellow, Payne's gray. It's that time of year too. I hope everybody's out getting some plants. Put a few dots, start putting a Tuscan tree in. Simple. Simple, just a few dots here and there. Before you know it, things start appearing. Now you might want to start figuring out where your foreground is. And this is just blocking in a painting, getting an idea. So I'm going to say, well, there's going to be maybe a big tree up here somewhere. So I grab some Payne's gray and a little bit of yellow. Throwing a big tree up on the side. And before you know it, what? Something's starting to appear. A little bit of a tree trunk on to work with. Some ground here and there. You say, okay, this side of the sky is dark, so I'm going to start adding a little bit of dark ground on this side. And this side over here where the light's coming in, we're going to make it a little brighter yellow. Again, the light's hitting here, darkness on this side. We don't know where we're going, but we can always create something. Simple. So you want to block in your painting, I call it. Artists do this just to sort of give them an idea of where they might be going with the painting. And we're going to transfer over here, and I'm going to show you where you can take an idea like this and go to the next level. Maybe in the back you might want to have some kind of a road appearing back there. So along the back section, you say, okay, we're going to have some kind of a road starting to appear, which pushes us back, pushes the eye back. Start working on the edges of the water. So maybe there's some suds starting to hit on the edge of the water. And you just start blocking these things in big, I call this the ugly painting. So the beginning of the painting, it's always ugly. And then as we work our way down, we start to refine everything, detail everything. as much as we want, maybe in the center of attraction we detail it, and we put less attention on the other sides. And as we work our way through, which I'm going to show you now, we're going to move up to something like this. So it's the same concept. So again, the same approach as what we were doing when we were blocking in. We're at the detailed part. We might take a piece of paper and you want to make sure your brush is good and clean for this part. So we're going to take some white and we're going to start pulling some of that sky through. Now you see that beautiful light sort of starting to happen, coming down through the sky. Amazing. Light, direction. So our clouds, again, remember we put the dark on one side, light on the other side, sort of, we're directing everything towards that little house in the center. How do we make the light show up? Well, there is no light without darkness. So everything is about adding darkness to make the light show. So those things in your life that are sort of pulling you apart and making you feel like, oh, I just can't seem to get over it, those are the things that are going to make the light that's within you show, make it sort of come to the surface. And it's a way of you coming to an understanding of your life and the ideas of what it is that you're supposed to do. You know, if everything was perfect every day and you got up, it'd be pretty boring. I had a chance, believe it or not, to go to this place and live on an island and sort of the lap of luxury. Just a beautiful place. Paint out my days on the beach. After a few months I was there and I realized how bored I was. It was like, everybody thinks, oh, the beach, I can't wait. I just want to live on the beach, drink margaritas. Well, that's good for about 2 weeks. And then after a while, you're doing the same old thing every day. Like the clouds, like everything, if we're not changing, we become dull and we just don't know what to do with ourselves. So we always have to be creating something new. So when you're doing a painting, don't be afraid to try something daring, break it. Just do things, throw things out there. So here I'm going to start highlighting, creating something new, something I've never tried. So I might do something like, maybe I'll try some brown in the clouds. Once in a while I see a little bit of weird sort of colors in the sky and I think, that's so strange. I would never think to put that in a painting. The other day I was going through and it was like this golden brown color through the clouds. So I thought, how could I do that? So we're going to try that here. Let's see what we can do. See if we can get something that looks brown in the clouds. So right up here near the edges, we're going to put a little bit of gold showing through. I'll often take my finger and I'll rub it around, sort of letting the color come down through. That way I got my DNA in there. Nobody can say it's not my painting. So we like to have a little bit of this color going through the sky, just creating just a bit. And what this does, it sort of warms up the sky. And it may work, it may not work. Doesn't matter. Experiment and have fun. What's the worst can happen? You have to paint over something. Now another thing is when you're painting the edges of your sky, around the clouds and things like that, you really want soft edges. You don't want to have a hard edge. So you put the edge on. So it's hard when you put it on in the beginning. So wherever your highlights might be going to be. Clean your brush out as you go along. And then sort of pull down that color, softening it up. Always softening up the clouds. Each layer, what's that old saying in Donkey and Shrek are walking along the trail and Donkey's asking him what love is and what do you think and how do you feel about things? And he says, it's complicated, Donkey. I'm like an onion. I got many layers. And he said, no, you just stink. So sometimes we stink, sometimes we got many layers. But the object is to just keep going forward and learning and creating something new and moving on. And don't sit there going, oh, that didn't work, or that was terrible. Or so many times we sit and emphasize our mistakes, and we painfully keep going over it and over it, saying, why did I do that? Why did I do that? But you can't change it. What you can do is move to the next section and be better in your life. As we see here, a little bit of white. I'm always going over top of whatever I've done, letting it show through. And you get this beautiful, beautiful light going on. Now, I don't know if you've noticed in this painting, I had fun. I noticed that there was since we were talking about Japanese tradition and yin and yang and Chinese and stuff today, I thought I would put some black and white yin and yang in here. So I painted one of the clouds sort of looked like a rose. So I didn't change the rose, I just emphasized, I put a little leaf in to sort of make it stand out. So that's one way to think about your painting. When you see something, you can emphasize what's there, the mistake. Because nothing's really a mistake. There's just, what is that old saying in Shakespeare? There's nothing good or bad unless we think it's so. I always used to wonder, what does that even mean, you know? But then I went back and I watched Hamlet so I could understand the quote. And so in Hamlet, he's come back from the war, or school. No, it's school he's actually come back from. And his father is dead, and his uncle has married his mother, and his life's falling apart. It's just terrible. And he's trying to figure this whole thing out, and he's going through in his mind, this is the worst place on earth. I can't wait to get out of here. I don't want to live here. And he's in this big, beautiful castle. And two of his friends come from school to try and cheer him up and talk to him. And they're saying, oh, this is the most incredible place I've ever seen. Like, it's such a dream to live here. And he thought to himself, he says, to them, this place is magical and a dream and everything. But to me, it's like a living hell, like a place I just can't wait to get out of. And then he writes the quote, as Shakespeare, being the master he does, says, there's nothing good or bad unless we think it's so. Just because something is good, try to stay steady and even and embrace it for what it is. If it's fun and you're enjoying it, then just enjoy it. Don't expect it to last forever, and don't be disappointed when it's done. And if it's a struggle and you're going through it and you're thinking, how am I ever going to get through this? Don't let it overbear you so much that the burdens make you sick and feeling terrible about life. So try to be an even keel, as Marcus Aurelius would say. You know, no matter what the situation, how am I handling it? Pay attention to your own thinking of how I'm handling what I'm going through. Am I being stoic? You know, am I preparing myself for the best of things? Everything's a season. We get winters, we get summers, and without one or the other, we couldn't really enjoy. I know what you're saying right now. I can just enjoy summer all the time. But if you're Canadian, you'd miss winter. I know you would. Christmases and that first snow and the kids playing, building a snowman or building a tunnel that you climbed through when you were a kid. There's something good about everything, even the harshest time. And when you're looking out, when you're going for a walk and you see a garden and there's a bunch of flowers there, think how much work one flower had to go through to just pop up into a garden where it just makes everything beautiful. You don't notice that one flower so much. But amongst the whole garden, the beauty that it helps create is unbelievable. And I think that's sort of where we should be headed towards life. We're individually breaking through the snow and trying to take all the weight off us so that we can pop up and show ourselves as a flower. But the goal is not to just be this one thing sitting in the field, but to be amongst a garden of flowers in a beautiful place that people can enjoy for a lifetime. Yeah, so sometimes when we're working on a painting, so we have this light coming down now, so if something we don't like, we can soften it up, take a little water and a rag, and we can say, okay, let's make it not quite so stark. Maybe just wipe it off a bit. Ease things up. And what's happening in the painting? Remember we were talking about direction. So we got a river coming down, pushing us to the road that's in the background. We got a small house where we all want to live. So we want to emphasize the house. So we got the light around the house. And how did we get the light around the house? We mixed Payne's gray and yellow, making different shades of green. So back here where we have the light, we want more of a yellowy green. And as we move up, we want shadows. So we make it darker, and we just keep adding Payne's gray, making it darker and darker as we move up. Now the little emphasis, a painting itself doesn't have to be this finite detail of every little piece, every little dot. You can put flowers in as simply as taking a brush, an old stipple brush like this, or a toothbrush, taking a little yellow paint, dabbing it on, and just touch above. And all of a sudden, you start to have these beautiful little flowers that are happening. And why do we make them bigger at the front? Because we want the things close to us to seem large and bright and full of paint, and as they move away, they fade. The variety changes. The color itself becomes faded in the distance because it's far away. If you put too much emphasis on certain things, that's where people's eyes are drawn. So we wanted to open up the sky and point down to this beautiful little villa. We wanted to create a warm feeling. Now, if you want to make it even warmer, you could take a little bit of cadmium orange, say, and you could do a gradient over the top. We could start rubbing in a little bit of orange cadmium and creating a little warmth in the sky. Or in the ground, I mean. So all we're doing is putting a wash right over the top and creating it a warm kind of atmosphere back there. Easy, nothing to it. And when you want to add light into your painting, you might take a small detailed brush and go through with a little bit of yellow and start emphasizing one side of the tree, putting the light down. As you can see, just a little bit. And if it's in the background, try to make it a little bit lighter, so the stuff in the front is brighter than the stuff at the back. Hopefully we can bring you some more paintings and ideas over the time, and we'll have different guests each week emphasizing how we work on our community and build it just like a painting into something special.